If I had $1 for every time my wife dressed as Catwoman, I could buy a new marriage. But here I was, standing in Richard's overcrowded living room on Halloween night, watching Alicia purr and stretch in that ridiculous black leather outfit while every man in the neighborhood pretended not to stare. My name's Greg Morrison, and at 38, I manage 3 restaurants in downtown Salem. It's honest work that pays the bills and keeps our 2 kids in decent schools. I used to box in college. Nothing fancy, just enough to know how to throw a punch and take one. These days, the only fighting I do is with quarterly reports and health inspectors. Greg, you look like someone pissed in your beer, Richard Martinez called out, weaving through the crowd with a pirate hat askew on his balding head. Richard's been my best friend since high school, one of those guys who tells it like it is whether you want to hear it or not. Just enjoying the show, I muttered, nodding toward where Alicia was laughing too loud at something Dominic Torres was saying. Dominic worked at the paper mill and looked like he'd stepped off a romance novel cover, all muscles and swagger. Tonight he was dressed as Tarzan, because of course he was. Don Draper with a gut and a mortgage, I said to myself, taking another swig of my beer. That's what I felt like most days, the advertising executive without the charm, the success, or the affairs. Though looking at my wife right now, maybe I was wrong about that last part. Susie Chen, Alicia's best friend and Dominic's wife, sauntered over dressed as Wonder Woman. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was about as heroic as a used car salesman. Greg, honey, you need to lighten up. It's a party. Yeah, I can see that, I replied, watching Dominic's hand linger on Alicia's lower back as he guided her toward the kitchen. Everyone's having such a good time. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. The house was packed with our usual crowd. John Martinez, Richard's younger brother, always stirring up drama, Nikki Martinez, Richard's wife, the only one with any sense, and about 30 other neighbors who'd known each other for years. The kind of tight-knit community where everyone knows everyone's business and secrets have the lifespan of a mayfly. I pushed through the crowd toward the kitchen, my jaw tightening as I heard Alicia's distinctive laugh echoing from that direction. When I rounded the corner, I found them huddled by the sink, their heads close together, whispering like teenagers planning to skip class. Having a private conversation? I asked, my voice carrying more edge than I intended. Alicia jumped back, her green eyes flashing with something that might have been guilt. Greg, you scared me. Dominic was just telling me about his new car. New car? I looked at Dominic, who was grinning like he'd won the lottery. Business must be good at the mill. You could say that, Dominic replied, his chest puffing out. Sometimes you just gotta take what you want, you know? Life's too short to play it safe. The way he looked at my wife when he said it made my temper flare. Is that your philosophy? Taking what you want? Greg. Alicia's voice carried a warning, but I was past caring about social niceties. No, I'm curious, I continued, stepping closer to Dominic, because some things aren't available for the taking. Some things belong to other people. Dominic's grin widened. Everything's negotiable, my friend. Everything has a price. That's when I snapped. Maybe it was the beer. Maybe it was months of watching my wife drift away from me. Or maybe it was just the smug look on Tarzan's face. I shoved him hard, sending him stumbling backward into the kitchen island. The crash was spectacular. Bottles fell, glasses shattered, and suddenly everyone in the house was pushing into the kitchen to see what happened. Dominic caught himself against the counter, his costume torn, his pride clearly wounded. What the hell, Greg? He snarled, straightening up. My thoughts exactly, I shot back. What the hell? Richard appeared at my shoulder, ready to play peacemaker. Guys, come on. It's Halloween. Let's keep it fun. But Dominic wasn't done. His face was flushed with anger and embarrassment, and he took a step toward me. You know what your problem is, Morrison? You don't know how to keep what's yours. Dominic, don't, Susie hissed, but he waved her off. No, he needs to hear this. You walk around here like you're king of the castle, but you can't even see what's happening right under your nose. His voice was getting louder, drawing more attention from the crowd. She's already been with me, Greg. Your precious wife has been warming my bed for months. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears as I turned to look at Alicia. Her face had gone pale beneath her Catwoman makeup, and tears were starting to streak down her cheeks. Alicia? I said quietly. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Greg, I can explain. But she didn't need to. The truth was written all over her face, in the way she couldn't meet my eyes, in the way Susie was suddenly very interested in her shoes, in the way the entire room was holding its breath waiting for my reaction. Well, I said finally, my voice surprisingly steady. I guess the party's over? The next morning felt like waking up in someone else's life. Alicia had spent the night at Susie's, and I spent it torn between rage and a disturbing sense of relief. At least I finally knew why she'd been so distant lately. The kids, Emma, 10, and Jake, 8, were at my sister's for the weekend, blissfully unaware of the wreckage their parents' marriage had become. I planned to keep it that way for now. Alicia came home around noon, still wearing yesterday's clothes, makeup smeared, and confidence nowhere to be found. She found me in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the paper like it was any other Sunday. "Greg, we need to talk," she said, hovering awkwardly. "Do we?" I replied, folding the paper. "I thought Dominic covered everything last night." "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," I interrupted. "What do you want to do about it?" Alicia sat down, her eyes calculating. "I made a mistake. But I want to fix this. I want to save our marriage." "Interesting timing," I said, eyeing her, "right after you got caught. I ended it with Dominic weeks ago. Last night was just... he was angry. He said those things to hurt you, to hurt me." I almost believed her, but something in her voice told me there was more. "If you ended it weeks ago, why were you at his house last night?" "I wasn't at his house. I was at Susie's." "Susie, who's married to Dominic?" "She's my friend, Greg. She was helping me figure out how to tell you the truth." "Some friend," I muttered. "She watched you destroy our marriage and said nothing." Alicia reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "Greg, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll do anything to make this right." "Anything?" "Yes." "Then show me your credit card statements." The color drained from her face. "What?" "You heard me. If we're going to rebuild trust, let's start with transparency. Credit cards, bank statements, everything." She hesitated before finally admitting, "I might have made some purchases. Things for the house. Clothes for the kids." "What kind of purchases?" "There might be some debt." "Nothing major, just..." "How much debt?" "Maybe 15,000. 20 at most." I stared at her. $20,000? On what?" "Things for the house, the kids." "Bullshit," I snapped. "Get the statements." She cried, but I could tell they were calculated. "If you love me, you'll help me with this." "If I love you," I shot back. "You cheat on me, run up 20 grand in secret debt, and now you're questioning my love?" "The debt isn't what you think." "Then what is it?" She couldn't answer. I looked at her, realizing she was a stranger. "I want the documents today," I said quietly. "Greg, today, or I call a lawyer." She flinched, then left to get the paperwork. I called Vince Kowalski, a private investigator I knew through the restaurant business. "Vince, I need a favor," I said. "Financial or personal?" he asked. "Both. My wife's been having an affair, and now she's got $20,000 in debt she needs help with. And you don't believe her?" "Not a word." Vince paused. "You sure you want to know?" Sometimes ignorance is cheaper than divorce. "I'm sure." "All right. Get me access to her accounts and credit reports. I'll see where the money went. Working on it." "Good. And Greg, don't do anything stupid. Let the system work." "Define stupid." "You know what I mean? No vigilante justice, no midnight visits, just evidence and lawyers." I hung up feeling better than I had since the party. At least now I was doing something instead of just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. Alicia came back an hour later with a folder full of papers. She spread them out on the kitchen table like she was dealing cards, her hands shaking slightly. "Here," she said. "Everything's here." I picked up the first statement and immediately saw the problem. Cash advances, expensive purchases at stores I'd never heard of, payments to companies that meant nothing to me. "What's Torres Auto Sales?" I asked, pointing to a $3,000 charge. "I don't know. Maybe car repairs?" "For $3 grand? What did you do? Buy a new engine?" "I don't remember every transaction, Greg." I flipped through more pages. "Here's another one. 5,000 to Torres Auto Sales, and another one. 2,000 to someplace called Muscle Beach Fitness. Maybe it's gym memberships. For $2 grand? What did you buy? The whole gym?" She was crying again, but this time it looked real. "I can't remember everything. There were so many charges. Because you weren't the one making them." The words hung in the air between us. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I think you gave Dominic access to your credit cards. I think you've been funding his lifestyle while I've been working 60-hour weeks to pay our bills." "That's not true." "Then explain Torres Auto Sales. That's his last name, isn't it?" She couldn't. She just sat there, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, and I realized this was so much worse than just an affair. She hadn't just shared her body with another man, she'd shared our financial future. How long? I asked. Greg, how long has this been going on? 6 months, maybe 8. 8 months. I did the math in my head. So you've been lying to me, sleeping with him, and spending our money on him for 8 months. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? But she didn't have an answer for that either. That night, after Alicia had gone to bed, I called Vince back and gave him everything I'd learned. He promised to have a full report within 48 hours. One more thing, he said before hanging up. That Torres Auto Sales? It's not a business. It's just a guy selling cars out of his driveway. No license, no insurance, probably no taxes paid either. Meaning? Meaning your wife bought her boyfriend a car with your credit, and he's probably flipping it for cash. This isn't just an affair, Greg. This is fraud. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. By the time I went to bed, I had the beginnings of a plan. Vince's report arrived Tuesday morning via email, and it was even worse than I'd imagined. $23,000 in charges over 8 months, all of them connected to Dominic Torres in some way. The car purchase, gym equipment, clothes, even a vacation to Atlantic City that I'd thought Alicia had taken with Susie. But the real kicker was the last page of the report. Vince had found text messages between Alicia and Dominic. Apparently, she'd been sloppy about deleting them from her cloud backup. The messages painted a picture of a woman completely infatuated with a man who saw her as nothing more than a walking ATM. Can you cover the insurance payment this month? Susie's been asking questions about money. Greg's being weird about the credit card bill. Can you lay low for a while? He's such an idiot. Works all the time and never pays attention to anything. We could probably buy a house with his credit and he wouldn't notice. That last one hit me like a punch to the gut. Not just because of what it said, but because of when it was sent. 3 days ago, right before the Halloween party. I was still processing the betrayal when my phone rang. Richard. Hey man, how are you holding up? I've been better. Listen, I know this is awkward, but Nikki and I are worried about you. You haven't been answering your phone, and Alicia's been calling everyone looking for support. Support for what? She's telling people you're being unreasonable, that you won't even try to work things out. I laughed, but it came out bitter. Work things out. Right. Greg, I'm your friend. I'm on your side, but maybe you should consider counseling or... Richard, did you know? Silence on the other end of the line. Did you know about the affair? I suspected something was off, he said finally, but I didn't know for sure. And you didn't say anything. It wasn't my place, man. I hoped I was wrong. Your place? I could feel my anger building. I'm your best friend. We've known each other for 20 years, and you didn't think you should warn me that my wife was screwing around? Greg, what kind of friend does that make you? The kind who doesn't want to destroy a marriage based on suspicion? The marriage was already destroyed, Richard. I was just the last to know. I hung up on him, angrier than I'd been since the party. It was bad enough that Alicia and Dominic had betrayed me, but knowing that my friends had suspected and said nothing made it 10 times worse. That afternoon, I drove to Murphy's boxing gym on the south side of town. I hadn't been there in years, but I needed to hit something, and I preferred it to be a punching bag rather than a person. Coach Pete Murphy was still there, 70 years old and tough as leather. He'd trained fighters for 40 years, and he remembered everyone who'd ever walked through his doors. Greg Morrison, he said when I walked in. Heard you had some trouble. Word travels fast. In this town? Everything travels fast. You here to work out some frustration? Something like that. He led me to the heavy bags and handed me a pair of gloves. Take your time. Work out whatever you need to work out. Just remember, the bag didn't do anything to you. I spent an hour pounding leather, working up a sweat and trying to clear my head. It felt good to use my body again, to remember what it was like to be strong and capable instead of just tired and defeated. I was toweling off when Dominic walked in. He saw me immediately, and for a second I thought he might turn around and leave. But then his chest puffed out, and he strutted over like he owned the place. Greg Morrison, he said loudly enough for everyone in the gym to hear. Fancy meeting you here? Dominic. I kept my voice neutral, but my hands were clenching into fists. I heard you've been asking questions about me, checking up on my business. Your business? My car sales, my finances. That's my business, not yours. I almost laughed. When it's bought with my wife's credit cards, it becomes my business. Your wife made her own choices. Did she? Or did you manipulate her into making them? He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, the same expensive stuff Alicia had been buying according to the credit card statements. Nobody manipulated anybody. She wanted to be with a real man for once. That's when I hit him. It wasn't a sucker punch. He saw it coming. But 20 years of restaurant work had kept my arm strong, and muscle memory from my boxing days guided the punch straight to his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping for air, and I followed up with an uppercut that sent him stumbling backward into a weight rack. The gym went silent except for the sound of Dominic trying to catch his breath. Coach Pete appeared at my shoulder. "That's enough," he said quietly. But Dominic wasn't done. He straightened up, his face red with rage and embarrassment, and charged at me. I sidestepped him easily. He was strong but sloppy, and used his momentum to send him crashing into a row of lockers. "You son of a bastard," he yelled, scrambling to his feet. "I'll destroy you." "You'll try," I said, settling into a fighting stance. He came at me again, swinging wildly. I blocked his punches and landed 2 quick jabs to his ribs, then stepped back as he stumbled forward. "Stop embarrassing yourself," I told him. That's when the other gym members started laughing. Not mean laughter, but the kind of laughter that comes when you see a bully get what's coming to him. Dominic looked around, realizing he was the entertainment, and his face went from red to purple. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is," Coach Pete said, stepping between us. "Dominic, you're banned. Get out of my gym." "You can't ban me." "I just did." "You came in here looking for a fight with a paying member. That's not what this place is for." "He hit me first. After you provoked him. I saw the whole thing." Pete pointed toward the door. "Out." Dominic looked around the gym, seeing nothing but hostile faces. "This is bullshit," he muttered, but he headed for the door. "Dominic," I called after him. He turned back, hope flickering in his eyes like maybe I was going to apologize. "Your car's getting repossessed tomorrow morning. Thought you should know." The hope died, replaced by confusion and fear. "What are you talking about?" "The car Alicia bought you." "With my credit. I reported the cards as stolen and disputed the charges. The bank's taking the car back." "You can't do that." "Already did. Have a nice day." He stood there for a moment, processing what I'd said, then stormed out into the rain that had started falling while we were fighting. Coach Pete handed me a towel. "Feel better?" "Getting there." "Good." "But be careful, Greg. Men like that don't like being humiliated. They tend to do stupid things when they're backed into a corner." I nodded, but I wasn't worried about Dominic. I was thinking about Alicia and what she was going to say when she found out what I'd done. I didn't have to wait long. She called while I was driving home, her voice shrill with panic. "Greg, what did you do? Dominic just called me screaming about his car." "Not his car," I said calmly. "Your car. That you bought him, with my credit. You can't just take it back. Watch me. This is crazy. You're acting like a child." "I'm acting like a man who's tired of being played for a fool. We can work this out. We can go to counseling, figure out a payment plan. Alicia, it's over. The marriage, the lies, the financial manipulation, all of it." "You don't mean that." "I've never meant anything more in my life." She was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, no regret. Just a cold satisfaction that I was finally taking control of my own life. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow," I continued, "and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly why." "Greg, please." I hung up on her and drove home through the rain, feeling lighter than I had in months. The car repossession happened exactly as planned. I'd made sure to time it for Wednesday morning when Dominic would be at the gym, his old gym, since Pete had banned him from Murphy's. The tow truck pulled up to Muscle Beach Fitness right as Dominic was finishing his workout, and half the neighborhood got to watch as they hooked up his precious Camaro and drove away. I know this because Mrs. Henderson from across the street called to tell me about it. Mrs. Henderson was 75 years old and had been the neighborhood's unofficial information network for decades. Nothing happened within a 6-block radius that she didn't know about within an hour. "That Torres boy was screaming like crazy," she said, clearly enjoying the drama. "Made quite a scene." Someone was recording it on their phone. "Recording it?" "Oh, yes, dear. Everything goes on the internet these days. I'm sure it'll be all over Facebook by tonight." She was right. By evening, the video had been shared dozens of times in our neighborhood's Facebook group. Dominic cursing at the tow truck driver, demanding to see paperwork, threatening to call the police. It was 3 minutes of pure humiliation, and I watched it twice. But that was just the appetizer. The main course came Thursday morning when I had breakfast with Jenny Walsh, the biggest gossip in our social circle. Jenny worked at the bank, volunteered at the school, and had coffee with half the neighborhood wives every week. If you wanted information to spread, Jenny was your woman. Greg, honey, I'm so sorry to hear about you and Alicia, she said, settling into the booth across from me at Danny's diner. I had no idea things were so bad. Neither did I, until recently. Well, you know what they say. The wife is always the last to know. Or in this case, the husband. She laughed at her own joke, then leaned forward conspiratorially. So what really happened? I've heard so many different versions. I'd prepared for this conversation carefully. I knew exactly what I wanted Jenny to know, and exactly how I wanted her to tell it. It's pretty simple, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee. Alicia's been having an affair with Dominic Torres for 8 months. She's been using our credit cards to buy him things, cars, clothes, gym equipment, vacations, $23,000 worth of things. Jenny's eyes went wide. $23,000? 23,000? While I've been working 60-hour weeks to pay our mortgage and keep the kids in decent schools? Oh my God. And Susie knew about this? I nodded. Susie knew. She was helping them cover it up, providing alibis, letting them meet at her house when Dominic was supposed to be at work. That little bastard, Jenny muttered, then caught herself. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. You should say whatever you want, Jenny. I'm done protecting people who don't deserve it. So what are you going to do? I'm divorcing her, and I'm making sure everyone knows why. I spent 8 months looking like an idiot while my wife and her boyfriend spent my money and laughed about what a fool I was. I'm not going to be quiet about it anymore. Jenny was practically buzzing with excitement. This was the kind of story she thrived on. Scandal, betrayal, financial drama, all wrapped up in a neat package she could share with everyone she knew. Well, you have my support, she said, and I'm sure everyone else will feel the same way once they know the truth. I hope so. I just want people to understand that this wasn't some mutual decision or irreconcilable differences. This was betrayal, plain and simple. By Friday afternoon, the story had spread through our neighborhood like wildfire. My phone was ringing constantly, friends offering support, acquaintances fishing for details, even people I barely knew calling to express their outrage on my behalf. The best call came from Mike Rodriguez, Alicia's boss at Henderson Insurance. Greg, I need to ask you about something, he said, his voice formal and uncomfortable. We've had some irregularities in our petty cash account, and your wife's name has come up. What kind of irregularities? Missing money. Small amounts over several months, but it adds up. And there are some personal purchases on the company credit card that she can't account for. I felt a grim satisfaction. Let me guess. Purchases for a man named Dominic Torres. How did you know that? Lucky guess. What are you going to do about it? I have to let her go, Greg. I'm sorry. I know this is a difficult time for you both, but I can't overlook this kind of behavior. Mike, you don't need to apologize to me. Alicia made her choices. She can live with the consequences. After I hung up, I poured myself a beer and sat on my back porch, thinking about how quickly everything was unraveling for the people who'd betrayed me. Dominic had lost his car and his gym membership. Alicia was about to lose her job. Susie was being frozen out by the other wives in the neighborhood, and I hadn't even gotten started yet. Saturday morning brought the confrontation I'd been expecting. Alicia showed up at the house while the kids were at soccer practice, her face puffy from crying and her hands shaking with anger. You destroyed my life, she said, pushing past me into the living room. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure people knew about it. You had no right to tell Jenny Walsh our private business. Private business? I laughed. You made it public business when you decided to screw around with Dominic in front of half the neighborhood. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending 8 months making me look like an idiot while you and your boyfriend laughed about what a sucker I was. She sat down heavily on the couch, her fight deflating. I lost my job. I heard. Mike says I stole money from the company. Did you? It wasn't stealing. I was going to pay it back. With what money? The money you spent on Dominic? She started crying again, but this time it felt different. Not manipulative tears designed to make me feel guilty, but genuine despair at the mess she'd made of her life. What am I supposed to do now? She asked. I don't know, Alicia. That's not my problem anymore. What about the kids? What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them the truth? That you made some bad choices and now you have to face the consequences. They'll hate me? Maybe. Or maybe they'll learn something about accountability. She looked up at me with something that might have been hope. Greg, is there any chance at all, that we could work this out? I studied her face, looking for some sign of the woman I'd married 12 years ago. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize and didn't particularly like. No, I said quietly. There's no chance. She nodded like she'd expected that answer, then stood up and headed for the door. I'm going to fight you on the divorce. I'm going to take half of everything. Good luck with that. My lawyer thinks the financial fraud changes things significantly. She stopped with her hand on the doorknob. What do you mean? I mean, you stole $23,000 from our family to buy things for your boyfriend. That's not exactly going to make you sympathetic to a judge. I never stole anything. You used credit cards without permission to make purchases for someone else. In legal terms, that's theft. Those were my credit cards too. Were they? Because according to my lawyer, using joint credit for personal gifts to a lover could be considered dissipation of marital assets, which means I might be entitled to more than half. The color drained from her face. You're bluffing. Am I? Do you really want to find out? She left without another word, and I went back to my beer and my planning, because as satisfying as this had been, I wasn't done yet, not even close. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was drinking coffee and reading the paper when someone started pounding on my front door like they were trying to break it down. I looked through the peephole and saw Susie Chen, her face red with anger and her finger jabbing repeatedly at my doorbell. I opened the door and she pushed past me without invitation, spinning around in my foyer like a tornado in designer jeans. You son of a bastard, she snarled. You destroyed my marriage. Good morning to you too, Susie. Don't you dare act innocent. You know what you did. I closed the door and leaned against it, crossing my arms. Why don't you enlighten me? You told everyone about Dominic and Alicia. You made it sound like I was some kind of accomplice. Weren't you? I was trying to be a good friend. To who? Because you sure as hell weren't being a good friend to me. She started pacing around my living room, her hands gesturing wildly. You don't understand the situation. Alicia was miserable. You never paid attention to her, never made her feel special. So that justified her stealing $23,000? She didn't steal anything. She used her own credit cards. To buy things for your husband. While I worked 60 hours a week to pay the bills? Dominic never asked her to buy him anything. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the screenshots Vince had provided. Really? Because I have a text here from Dominic asking her to cover his car insurance, and another one asking for money for gym equipment, and another one asking her to pay for a weekend in Atlantic City. Susie's face went white. Where did you get those? Does it matter? The point is, your husband was using my wife as his personal ATM and you helped him do it. That's not true. Susie, you let them meet at your house. You provided alibis when Alicia was supposed to be working late. You went on that Atlantic City trip with them to make it look legitimate. She stopped pacing and stared at me. How do you know about Atlantic City? I know about everything. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What do you mean? I mean, your marriage is over. Dominic's been exposed as a cheater and a user, you've been exposed as an enabler, and everyone in the neighborhood knows about it. So what's your next move? She sank into my recliner, her anger deflating into despair. He says it's my fault. He says if I'd been a better wife, he never would have looked elsewhere. And you believe that? I don't know what to believe anymore. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Susie, your husband spent 8 months manipulating my wife into buying him things while he was married to you. That's not about you being a bad wife. That's about him being a bad person. But the money that should have been going to your household expenses, the money that should have been securing your future, yeah, that's a problem. She started crying, and unlike Alicia's calculated tears, these seemed genuine. What am I supposed to do? I don't have a job. I don't have any savings. Everything's in Dominic's name. You get a lawyer, you get a divorce, and you start over. It's not that easy. It's exactly that easy. The hard part is admitting that your marriage was built on lies. She looked up at me through her tears. Is that what you're doing? Starting over? That's exactly what I'm doing. Aren't you scared? I thought about it for a moment, terrified. But I'm more scared of staying in a situation where people I trusted were lying to me and stealing from me. She nodded and wiped her eyes. Greg, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. Why didn't you tell me? I thought they would figure it out on their own. I thought it was just a phase. For 8 months? I wasn't thinking clearly. Alicia's my best friend, and she was so unhappy. So you helped her destroy 2 marriages instead of suggesting counseling or divorce. I made a mistake. You made a series of mistakes, and now everyone's paying for them. After Susie left, I spent the rest of the day preparing for what I knew was coming. Alicia and Dominic were both backed into corners now, their reputations destroyed, their finances in ruins, their futures uncertain. People in that situation tend to do desperate things. I wasn't wrong. Monday evening, as I was grilling burgers for the kids, all three of them showed up at my house together. Alicia, Dominic, and Susie, standing on my front porch like some kind of dysfunctional delegation. I sent Emma and Jake to their rooms and stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "This is unexpected," I said. "We need to talk," Alicia said, trying to sound authoritative. "About what?" "About ending this war you've started," Dominic said, puffing out his chest like he was still intimidating. I looked at him with genuine amusement. "War? Is that what you think this is?" "You've been systematically destroying our lives," Susie said. "Spreading lies, manipulating people." "Lies?" I pulled out my phone again. Which part was a lie? The affair, the stolen money, the car I paid for, the vacation I paid for, the gym equipment I paid for. "You're taking everything out of context," Alicia said. "Context?" I nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, let's talk about context. The context is that you three conspired to defraud me for 8 months. The context is that you made me look like an idiot in front of everyone I know. The context is that you stole money from my children's future to fund your little love triangle." "It wasn't a triangle," Susie protested. "I never—" "You enabled it. You facilitated it. You're as guilty as they are." Dominic took a step forward, trying to loom over me. "You need to stop this shit right now." "Or what?" "Or we'll make you stop," I laughed. "How? You going to beat me up? All three of you? On my own property? In front of my kids?" "We'll sue you for harassment," Alicia said. "With what money?" "You don't have a job, remember?" "We'll tell everyone the truth about what kind of person you really are," Dominic said. "Please do. I'm curious to hear your version of the truth." They looked at each other, realizing they didn't actually have any leverage. They'd come here expecting to intimidate me into backing down, but they hadn't thought through what they'd do if I refused. "Greg," Alicia said, her voice softening, "this has gone far enough. We all made mistakes." "No," I interrupted. "You made mistakes. I'm just making sure there are consequences." "What do you want?" Susie asked. "What will it take for you to leave us alone?" I pretended to consider the question. "I want Dominic to pay back every penny Alicia spent on him. I want public apologies from all three of you. And I want you to stay away from me and my children." "That's impossible," Dominic said. "I don't have that kind of money." "Then I guess we have a problem." "You're being unreasonable," Alicia said. "I'm being proportional. You stole from me, lied to me, and humiliated me. Now you get to experience what that feels like." "This isn't over," Dominic said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," I replied. "You just don't know it yet." They left without another word, but I knew they'd be back. Desperate people don't give up easily, and they were about to get a lot more desperate. Because I wasn't done with them. Not even close. The final confrontation came on a Thursday night in November, 3 weeks after their pathetic attempt at intimidation. I was expecting it, had been preparing for it, actually. The security cameras I'd installed, the motion-activated lights, the recording equipment, all of it was ready. I'd spent those 3 weeks methodically destroying what was left of their reputations. A word here, a document there, a carefully timed revelation to the right person. By the time they showed up at my house that night, all three of them had lost everything that mattered to them. Dominic had been fired from the mill after his supervisor learned about the car fraud. Apparently, using company time to coordinate your girlfriend's credit card purchases was frowned upon. Alicia had been blacklisted from every insurance company in the area after word spread about her irregularities with petty cash. And Susie had been served with divorce papers by her husband, who'd finally grown tired of being married to an accomplice. The weather was perfect for what I had planned. A cold, driving rain that would make everything more miserable for them and more dramatic for the cameras. I was sitting in my living room, reading a book and waiting when the doorbell rang at exactly 9:30. I looked through the peephole and saw all three of them standing on my porch, soaked to the skin and looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. But desperation makes people do things they'd never normally consider. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Evening." "We need to talk," Alicia said, her teeth chattering from the cold. "So talk." "Can we come in?" "No." Dominic pushed forward, his face red with anger and rain. "Stop playing games, Morrison. We're here to settle this." "Settle what?" "You know what?" Susie said. "You've destroyed our lives. You've cost us our jobs, our marriages, our reputations. Enough is enough." I stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind me. The motion-activated cameras were recording everything, and I wanted to make sure they got good angles. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," I said, raising my voice slightly so the microphones would pick up every word. "You're angry because there were consequences for your actions?" You didn't just expose us, Alicia said. You systematically destroyed us. The same way you systematically stole from me for 8 months? We never stole anything, Dominic shouted. Really? I pulled out a folder I'd prepared for this moment. Because I have credit card statements showing $23,000 in fraudulent charges. I have text messages showing you requesting money from my wife. I have receipts showing purchases made for you with credit cards you weren't authorized to use. Those cards had her name on them. Joint cards. For joint expenses. Not for buying your girlfriend's husband a car. You can't prove that was fraud, Susie said, but her voice lacked confidence. Actually, I can. Because I hired a forensic accountant to trace every transaction. And I hired a lawyer to file criminal charges. The three of them went very still. This was news to them. Criminal charges? Alicia whispered. Identity theft, credit card fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. The district attorney was very interested in your case. You're bluffing, Dominic said, but he didn't sound sure. I pulled out another document. Warrant for your arrest, Dominic. They're picking you up tomorrow morning. He snatched the paper from my hands, his eyes scanning the legal language. This is bullshit. Is it? Because the way I read it, you're facing 5 to 10 years for financial fraud. I never signed anything. I never used those cards. But you benefited from their use. And you conspired with my wife to conceal the fraud. That makes you an accessory. Alicia was crying now, but I felt nothing. Greg, please. Think about the kids. Think about what this will do to them. I am thinking about the kids. I'm thinking about the college funds you stole from. I'm thinking about the retirement money you spent on your boyfriend. I'm thinking about the future you destroyed for your own selfish gratification. We can pay you back, Susie said desperately. With what money? None of you have jobs. We'll get jobs. We'll work out a payment plan. Too late for that. You had 8 months to come clean. You chose to keep lying. Dominic crumpled up the warrant and threw it at my feet. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won? I know I've won. This isn't over. Yes, it is. He charged at me then, exactly as I'd hoped he would, but I was ready for him. I sidestepped his clumsy rush, grabbed his arm, and used his momentum to send him crashing into the porch railing. He went down hard, landing in a puddle of muddy rainwater. Dominic! Susie screamed. He scrambled to his feet, his clothes soaked and muddy, his pride completely shattered. I'll destroy you. No, you won't, I said calmly, because you're a coward. You're the kind of man who seduces other men's wives and spends other men's money. You're not the kind of man who actually fights for anything. He took another swing at me, but it was half-hearted and sloppy. I blocked it easily and pushed him backward into Alicia, sending them both stumbling off the porch into the rain. Stop it, Alicia yelled. Just stop it. I'm not doing anything, I said. Your boyfriend's doing it all himself. Neighbors were starting to come out of their houses now, drawn by the shouting. I could see Mrs. Henderson on her porch, her phone out, probably recording everything. Perfect. You want to know what the real tragedy is? I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. I loved you, Alicia. I worked 60 hours a week to give you a good life. I trusted you completely, and you threw it all away for this loser. Greg, and you, Dominic. You had a wife who loved you, a decent job, a good life. But that wasn't enough, was it? You had to have more. You had to take what belonged to someone else. Shut up, he screamed. And Susie. You were supposed to be Alicia's friend. You were supposed to be my friend. Instead, you helped them destroy 2 marriages and steal from my children. The crowd of neighbors was growing larger, and I could see phones out everywhere recording the whole confrontation. This would be all over social media within an hour. You're all pathetic, I continued. You're selfish, dishonest, and pathetic. And now everyone knows it. Dominic made one last desperate charge, but he slipped in the mud and went down hard, landing face first in a puddle. The crowd actually laughed, and I could see him realize that he'd become a joke. We're leaving, Alicia said, helping Dominic to his feet. Good idea, I replied. And don't come back. Any of you. You're not welcome here anymore. They stumbled away into the rain, soaked and muddy and completely defeated. The crowd of neighbors watched them go, then turned to look at me with something that might have been respect. Hell of a show, Greg, called out Tom Bradley from across the street. Better than cable, added Mrs. Henderson. I waved to the crowd and went back inside, feeling better than I had in months. It was over. Finally, completely, definitively over. The criminal charges stuck. Dominic got 3 years for fraud and conspiracy. Alicia got 2 years probation and community service. Susie got divorced and moved back in with her parents. I got my life back. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. The judge, having heard all the evidence about the financial fraud, awarded me primary custody of the kids and most of the assets. Alicia got visitation rights and a job at a convenience store in the next town over. I sold the house and bought a smaller one across town, away from all the memories and drama. Emma and Jake adjusted better than I'd expected. Kids are resilient, and they'd seen enough of their mother's behavior to understand why the marriage had ended. I started dating again, eventually. Nothing serious, just dinner and movies with women who didn't steal from me or lie to me or conspire against me. It was refreshing. Sometimes I run into people from the old neighborhood, and they always want to know how I'm doing. I tell them I'm doing great, which is the truth. I sleep well at night, I enjoy my work, and I trust the people in my life. Most importantly, I learned something valuable from the whole experience. Revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting justice. It's about making sure that people face consequences for their actions, and that those consequences are proportional to the harm they caused. Alicia, Dominic, and Susie destroyed 2 marriages, stole $23,000, and humiliated me in front of everyone I knew. In return, they lost their jobs, their reputations, their freedom, and their futures. That's not revenge. That's justice, and sometimes justice tastes even sweeter than revenge. The end final character. Count. 48,247 characters, 7 characters, 7 characters, 7 characters, 7 characters, 7 characters, 7 characters,